This video will unsurprisingly be quite censored, so if you'd like to check out the uncensored director's cut version plus support your boy, then make sure to go over to my Patreon, patreon.com/theanimeman, links down in the description below.
How's it going, everyone? This is the Anime Man. What does it take for a piece of fiction to become so controversial that it eventually ends up getting itself banned? Obviously, it goes without saying, but what a single person finds to be offensive, immoral, or just plain wrong is subjective matter, and ultimately it is open to all sorts of debate and discussion as to whether it is subjectively or objectively wrong. But if there's one thing that the world of Japanese animation has done pretty consistently over the past couple of decades, it's getting certain scenes, episodes, or entire series banned from Japan, overseas, or sometimes the entire world. Some of you more hardcore weebs might be familiar with some of the more infamous examples out there. The final episode of Excel Saga that was so gory and over-sexualized that it got itself banned in Japan. The first episode of Osomatsu-san, which managed to somehow break every copyright and fair use law on the planet. And the entirety of the Shoujo Tsubaki series for being, well, Shoujo Tsubaki. Now, these are just a couple of examples, but at the end of the day, all the ones that I mentioned just now are all considered anime, which are in one regard or another intended to be viewed by a wider audience. But today in this video, oh no, we're not going to be talking about anime. Yes, I know I'm called the Anime Man, get off my back. No, today we'll be diving down deep into the dark, dank, murky, and underground layer of Japanese animation, aka the culture gentleman's realm, aka hentai. Y'all should know me by now. I love hentai, not just for the you like sexual content degenerative reasons, but also because of its sheer amount and variety. As it's mostly an untapped, even taboo subject to talk about openly on the internet and on YouTube and stuff like that, I personally have a lot of interest and curiosity towards that subject matter. And naturally, as I was scratching my cultured beard, I thought to myself, well, we have a lot of anime series that have been banned in the past. We have a lot of manga series that have been banned in the past, but what's the most banned hentai ever made? We're about to enter a world of scientific research and study, so this is not the right attire for me to wear. No, I must get into the proper physique. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy, Dr. Plenty of Hentai. And it is time for the culture, ladies and gentlemen, so put on your top hats, brush off your suits, and wipe off those monocles, because today we will be discovering and discussing the infamous and rather insane world that is the most banned hentai ever made, simply titled Kite. Originally titled A Kite in Japanese, this 1998 OVA animation, written and directed by Umetsu Yasuomi, contains two 30-minute episodes following the story of Sawa, an orphan schoolgirl whose parents were brutally murdered during her youth. She then gets custodied by Akai and Kanye, two detectives assigned to the double murder of her parents. But these detectives are not as kind-hearted as they make themselves out to be. The two train Sawa to become a gunslinging, killing machine who organizes assassinations of corrupt celebrities, businessmen, and politicians, all the while promising Sawa that they will seek vengeance and find the killers of her parents. Dreaming of one day living a normal life, Sawa meets another assassin named Oburi, and the two kick off their friendship while diligently fulfilling their master's requests. As they talk and hang out more, they start to piece together the truths of their masters, the city, and a free life that they wish to gain. Getting desperate to be freed and learning the many dark truths behind the entire operation, Sawa and Oburi seek to escape from the clutches of their evil guardians and this hellish lifestyle. Now, just hearing about that on the surface and seeing the footage that hopefully has just played, you might be thinking to yourself, what the hell, Dr. Hentai? That sounds freaking awesome. Like, looks awesome. How could this possibly be the most banned hentai of all? Out of all of them, it's this one? And you would be absolutely right into thinking that, because I personally thought, after watching the 1998 OVA that just played, that Kite is kind of fucking brilliant. While the visuals have that very clear and distinct 90s OVA look to it, the animation fluidity and action choreography are stunning to look at, even to this day. It's hard to believe this came out over 20 years ago, when a lot of the scenes in this feel and look better than a lot of anime airing today. Not to mention that the sound design and soundtrack are also immaculate. The gunshots punch hard into your headphones, and the almost experimental jazz-infused soundtrack written by composer An Fu really highlight the grimy and dirty the attitude portrayed in the themes and subject matter presented in Kite. To me, it kind of sounded like if Cowboy Bebop and Bacano had a baby and then drank a lot of radioactive fluids and grew 7 arms. So then you might be wondering, Dr. Henty, how did something so awesome and epic and grimy and cool and very touching to the time that it was made get itself banned so hard? Well, there's actually a number of factors, and for starters, let's just say that this show is definitely not short on the gore department. Sawa's weapon has an ability in which bullets that are shot into a human body explode on impact, which you can guess make for some pretty gory and splatter-friendly death sequences. And Kite, coming straight out of the womb of the 90s OVA era, which was infamous for its extreme gore and violence in series like Violence Jack, Genocyber, and Wicked City, definitely did not hold back on trying to compete with its then competitors. Bottom line, a lot of people just don't really dig the gory shit. Understandable, have a nice day. Which is probably why a lot of people back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when watching and discovering this, kind of took the VCR of this and threw it into the nope pile of Japanese animation that was just way too gory and weird for their liking. And listen, look, I don't mind my gory anime. In fact, there's a lot of ones that are kind of freaking cool and over the top for its goriness. But one aspect that made Kite difficult to stomach even for someone like me is its overly well mixed and produced sound effects of bodies exploding and blood splattering. It definitely makes you feel the violence more than just watching it and hearing it. It's kind of the same logic as watching those like live action gore porn films where the better the acting is, the more disturbing and grotesque and hard to stomach it becomes for the viewer. So I guess in that regard, the intricate attention to detail in Kite makes that a good and a bad thing depending on who you are. But may I remind you of the second major point as to why this show got banned and was considered offensive, because may I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, of the title of this video. Because the well-mixed, well-produced Foley artist doing a fantastic job of enacting bodies exploding and blood splattering all over the place into your headphones, making your stomach churn, is not the only reason why this show got banned. We of course have to touch upon the OVA's very explicit degenerative scenes. In total, there are about 7 minutes worth of degenerative scenes that were cut out of the original director's cut version, which, looking at it from a big picture, is really not a lot at all. If my math is correct, and it is because I am a doctor, that's about 12% of the OVA, which was considered degenerative and R18, which, on a grand scale of things, and if you compare it to other hentai series out there, is really not a lot of degenerative scenes. If anything, from my experience, it's more the opposite. It's like 88% of the hentai is the degenerative scenes, and 12% is just regular fun story. Trust me, I would know. But the problem then lies down to the context of said scenes. Yes, there is only 7 minutes worth of it in the actual series, but a lot of the scenes, if not most of the series, involve Sawa, aka a high school girl. Particularly, there is one 30-second scene that involves a flashback of Sawa, aka a very, very young Sawa in a degenerative scene. I don't have to go into detail about what exactly happens in that scene because I'm sure any smart, degenerative man or woman watching this video will understand exactly what I'm implying with that. And YouTube, forgive me because it gets pretty bad. But hopefully, without me going into detail, you can understand as to why a scene like that may have gotten itself a little bit controversial and possibly gotten itself banned from many, many countries out there, especially back in the 90s. Understandable. Have a nice day. And the banning of the Kite series due to those explicit scenes may have been potentially a catalyst to get Japanese animation, especially a lot of the ones that were kind of created and produced and distributed underground, like the Kite series, possibly get itself viewed by law enforcement overseas, internationally, kind of sifting through all of the explicit scenes and being like, oh, in Japan that may be allowed or that may be accepted as a form of art, but in every other country over the ocean, no siree. Ban hammer. Now, whether it was actually the first ever hentai series to get the ban hammer internationally is up for debate. But it ended up with Kite not only getting itself banned in a lot of Asian countries, European countries, and all of the US, but it also saw itself getting a remastered edition of the original OVA with the 7 minutes of degenerative scenes completely cut out, and that version of Kite getting distributed over to the West. What came after this banning and this redistribution, this reimagining of the Kite series over in the West was this very intricate flame war between the Puritans of the Western world who couldn't stand anything of this caliber and the fans of the OG Director's Cut edition of the Kite series. Many of the OG fans debating that it was kind of an unnecessary move to get rid of all 7 minutes of degenerative scenes. Like, we can understand you getting rid of the 30-second scene with young Sawa, like, yeah, I think we can all agree that shit kind of went a little too far. So maybe just cut that bit out, but the rest of the 6.5 minutes, you know, it's kind of important. You should probably keep that in. We're not just being horny on main, I swear. And look, for research purposes, I went and watched Kite. I watched the remastered version that was distributed to the West, and I watched the original Director's Cut version with the full 7 minutes of explicit scenes. And in my professional doctorly opinion here, I almost have to agree with the OG fans here, in that I think the explicit scenes in the original Kite really made the series better for all sorts of reasons, but not for the lewd and degenerative reasons your dirty ass might be thinking of. What Kite did so brilliantly is that it took many, if not all of these explicit scenes, and put context behind it to develop characters and instill a certain emotion in others. All of the explicit scenes in the original are definitely far from the lovey-dovey, consensual, vanilla acts that are generally not frowned upon as much. And while it may be seen as immoral, gross, and offensive to many, it also manages to get viewers to empathize with the victims while vigorously loathe the culprits. We know from scene 1 that this world these characters are placed in is a dark, scary, and brutal place, full of corrupt, disgusting, and abhorrent creatures calling themselves humans. Sawa, falling victim to these humans, develops her hatred towards her enemies, but it also makes the final vengeance scene of the OVA that much more rewarding and satisfying to the viewer. Kite does not beat around the bush when it shows you its ugly, sinister side, and as much as it may be hard to swallow for the average anime fan, its brutal honesty to explicitly show these horrible things really helps it to create a truly engaging world, in my opinion. Now look, I gotta mention this next part of the video because otherwise all 7 super fans of the Kite OVA are gonna write me very passive-aggressive and angry emails and comments. But did you also know that the Kite series actually has a number of sequels, spiritual successors, and spin-offs? Most notable is the direct sequel, Kite Liberator. Unlike its prequel, Liberator took away all of its explicit scenes right from the get-go, thus turning into a rather boring and drab 90s action OVA that is honestly not worth watching or talking about in great detail. This isn't just my horny side saying this, trust me, but Liberator is a great example of how explicit scenes and sexually implied scenes can make for some really good world building and character development in a dark fantasy world like the Kite universe, because Liberator definitely failed in that department compared to its prequel. Then we have the equally notable spiritual successor, Mezzo Forte. You've probably heard of this one more since it has an equal amount of lewdness to Kite, but many people mistake this for a sequel because of the inconspicuous cameo of Sawa, when in reality I think Umetsu just wanted to take another jab at Kite from a different angle and see if he could garner the same set of results, which to his credit, it came out pretty well in my opinion. The OVA has just as many notable action scenes, memorable tunes in its soundtrack, and a fistful of 90s OVA lewdness for the whole squad to enjoy. But there is actually one more iteration of the Kite franchise, which I want to talk about in a little bit more detail, because not only is it the most unique and fascinating entry into the franchise, but it's probably also the most unknown of the bunch as well. And of course, I'm talking about the Kite live-action movie adaptation. That's right, somebody thought it would be a fantastic idea to take literally the most banned hentai series ever created and throw some live-action actors into it and turn it into a big screen movie. We truly live in a society. Like, when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I thought it was like an April Fool's joke or like a parody or something, because I genuinely couldn't believe this existed. I mean, for Christ's sake, fucking Samuel L. Jackson is in this goddamn movie. Look, I love Samuel L. Jackson. I love everything that he's in. He's a fantastic actor. And I know in interviews he said that he's loved anime and hentai and all that kind of stuff, but goddamn, dude, really? And for some reason, this movie is like readily available on Amazon Prime Video for some reason. Like, I'm not sponsored, I just wanted to point that out because I thought that's a very strange movie for Amazon to invest in, but you do you, boo-boo. So naturally, my curiosity got the best of me. I mean, seriously, how well could possibly someone take the most banned, controversial hentai of the 90s and early 2000s and turn it into a somewhat decent, fantastic, or even great live-action movie adaptation. Not very fucking well. Calling this 2014 film an adaptation is kind of the same thing as calling a McDonald's a restaurant. Like, sure, from the outside it might look like a restaurant, but once you enter it, it's pretty fucking far from it. And listen, my boys and girls, I've seen a lot of live-action anime adaptations in the past. God, I've lived through so many of them. But I would have to say that in all of my career, Kite 2014 might possibly be one of the worst offenders in the genre. Like, this movie fucking sucks. Not only did it completely change the story and setting that the OVA was set in, but it also included characters and entire plot points that just straight up didn't exist in the original. For starters, in the film, there is this crime syndicate called Emir, which takes children from the streets and sells them to flesh cartels. That never existed in the hentai. Meanwhile, there's this street gang that the Emir hires to kidnap children called The Numbers that just look like a bunch of rejected actors from the Mad Max movies. Also never existed in the hentai. But the worst offender, the absolute worst thing that they added to this live action movie, which basically completely destroyed any logic that this film ever possibly had, is this thing called AMP. Essentially, it's this drug that Sawa takes to fight the PTSD she has as a cause of her parents getting killed in front of her. By the way, this drug, again, never fucking existed. But the one other side effect this drug causes is that it acts as a memory cleanser and basically makes the user temporarily forget about their past until it gradually wears off and the NAM flashbacks kick in again. In other words, Sama forgets everything about her past experiences and friends, including her parents, for a brief moment so that she can compose herself to act in these killings cold-heartedly? May I remind you all, Kite is a revenge story. The entire reason why Sawa is out there with a gun in her hand, killing people to do the biddings of her masters is so that she can eventually pick up clues that will lead her to the killer that truly killed her parents to avenge their deaths. So why in the hell would you include a plot device in your movie that completely negates the entire point of the movie? Like, I couldn't fucking believe it. Like, that first scene where she goes back to her room and Akai gives her this fucking drug and she starts zonking out, forgetting her memories. I was just like, dude, what are you doing? The point of the story is disappearing in front of my eyes. Not only does it make this film's plot super confusing even for a fan of the OVA, but it also drags out the movie way too thin because Sawa keeps fucking forgetting the reason why she has a gun in her hand. Not to mention, without giving any spoiler material away, that a lot of characters that originally die in the OVA are kept alive for some reason. Like, Sawa goes through this entire film killing people, just overkilling people in the most ridiculous comic book type of ways. And yet she keeps the main bad guy alive at the end of the movie because, I don't know, like, she still has a human heart or some shit. Also, can we talk about the fact that one of the most unique elements to the Kite franchise, aka Sawa's weapon, is barely fucking used in the movie? Like, she uses the gun in some of the more notable scenes from the OVA, aka the opening elevator scene and the toilet fight scene. But the rest of the time, she doesn't even have the gun with her and instead is slicing up bitches with a box cutter. Like, looking back on this now, there really isn't a single scene that they managed to perfectly recreate from the original OVA series. Like, the opening elevator scene, the old woman is still alive for some reason, and the detective picks up a bullet that is supposed to have exploded. Hello? That's like someone picking up a roadside bomb that's fully intact and goes, yeah, this just exploded, can you believe it? The bathroom fight scene, which by the way is one of the most visually stunning fight scenes in the OVA, turned into this really bland and almost comedic scene that has zero tension whatsoever because you don't know who the fuck most of these people are for half half the time. The showdown scene where in the OVA, Sawa finally confronts her parents' killer in the sewers, which results in a really powerful and gratifying death scene. In the movie, just becomes this sappy, dragged out, Dragon Ball Z-esque staring contest, which again results in the bad guy not even dying. And I kid you not, the movie literally ends with a flashback scene of young Sawa and young Obari running through an open green field while Sawa is dragging through the sky a kite. Oh god, just saying that surface level metaphor almost made me throw up. It's like the director got the original VCR and was like, wait, why did Uematsu call this kite? What does this have to do with a kite? Think, damn it, we have to somehow link back to the dumbass audience watching this movie why this movie is called a kite. Hey, you got any kites lying around? Can you just kind of fly them up as like a metaphor for her memories or something? And whenever she injects the drug that makes her lose her memory, just make the kite disappear from the window? It's painful to think that that conversation probably happened. I mean, look, I'll give the movie credit for sticking to its gory, dark aesthetics that the OVA had, and, you know, as much as I am complaining and couldn't believe it, Samuel L. Jackson's acting was actually pretty decent, but that's really all the praises I can give to this so-called adaptation. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes literally gave it a 0%, which is probably more brutal than anything you'll ever see in this movie. It's such a shame because I guarantee that the number of people who went to the cinemas back in 2014 saw this thinking, ooh, this is based off an anime series? Well, I've heard this thing called anime was pretty freaking cool. I know One Piece is a cool thing, so this might be cool as well. Who probably then came out of the cinemas really fucking disappointed, probably never expecting anything good out of the world of anime ever again. Even though they're missing out on a pretty historically significant and decent, in my opinion, 90s OVA, which is leagues better than the movie they probably just watched, even whilst having illegal material within it. But look, I'm definitely not here to just shout and whine at how crappy live-action anime movies are. I think we've all seen enough videos on YouTube of all sorts of different live-action movies sucking and how the anime is superior and all that kind of shit. So all I really want to say in this video is that yes, even though Kite is technically the most banned hentai ever created, and it does have some pretty sketch material in it, I still implore you to at least give it a go. Especially if you are really curious to see some amazingly executed and choreographed fight scenes and action scenes, which still to this day look fucking badass. And if you just want to experience something that is so poignantly specific to that era of anime. I feel like a lot of 90s OVAs especially are very much slept on by the anime audience of today because a lot of them think that it's just old, it's outdated, it's just gory and brutal for the sake of being gory and brutal. And look, yes, while a lot of them definitely do fall into that department, I still think it's somewhat of an interesting and very unique time period in anime. Like again, you know a 90s OVA when you see one. Like, am I saying that the Kite OVA is the most fantastic anime series you'll ever watch in your life? Absolutely fucking not. But I hope that at least people will be able to kind of appreciate it for what it is, regardless of if you end up finding it offensive, immoral, or wrong in any sense. And just understand that yes, while this may be the most banned hentai in the history of hentai, it is also somewhat of a cool artistic piece of entertainment. Bottom line, conclusion for this research piece is that anime is fascinating. It's kind of cool that now we have the technology and advancements to be able to go back and watch these very timely pieces of animation to really get a sense of what the underground landscape of anime used to be like back then. And I feel like for me personally, I'm just getting started on this journey as well. I mean, there's definitely a side of anime that I feel like I haven't explored enough of, and if I can find some more interesting things on it, I definitely want to share it with you guys as well. Because trust me, while there is a lot of cool, underground, hidden 90s OVA stuff out there, there's also a lot of shit out there as well. So hopefully I'll be able to bring my Dr. Plenty of Hentai expertise onto this channel once again in the near future to to be able to talk about it with you guys. But in the meantime, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about anything I mentioned in this video down in the comments below. If you have seen Kite, whether it's the remastered version, the original director's cut version, the many spin-offs and sequels, or God forbid, the live action movie, then let me know what you think about it. Do you find it offensive for the sake of offensive, or do you find some kind of artistic integrity behind it? And if there are any more weird, strange, like what the fuck types of anime or hentai shows that you would like me to research and dissect and talk about, then leave your suggestions either down in the comments below, or follow your boy over on Instagram and Twitter as well, and leave me your suggestions there. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you would like to watch the uncensored director's cut version of this video and support your boy's content in the meantime, then I suggest going over to my Patreon and supporting me there, patreon.com/theanimeman, links down in the description below. This has been Dr. Plenty of Henty signing out today. Stay degenerative, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, like and favorite if you enjoy, subscribe for anime banter, keep watching anime. Ciao now!